Christian XC1 review covering Las Vegas and the world. We have one of pro wrestling's greatest stars, a WWE Hall of Famer, of course, made his name across the world, ECW, WCW, WWE, you name it. Rob Van Dam is back with us 25 years later here on C1 Review. On April 18th, Rob will be hosting the WrestleMania Night 1 watch party at the Plaza Showroom at the Plaza Hotel and Casino. Question and answer session starts at 1:30 p.m. with RVD. Also, April 17th through the 19th, he'll be at WrestleCon at the Horseshoe. And if that weren't enough, he'll be on April 19th, the after party at the Nerd at 450 Fremont Street, night 2 on April 19th. And then, of course, WWE World, Monday, April 20th. Those are all of the events. RVD will be everywhere, but at WrestleMania in the main event this coming week here in Las Vegas. Rob, it's so great to have you on C1 Review. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for the intro. But I did notice you missed that I have 2 wrestling matches that week as well. One of them is BTW, the show on the 17th. You see that poster for that? You didn't mention that one. So where is that? Somewhere on Main Street. Yeah, BTW, and then also I'm on the GCW show that starts at midnight on that
We'll put the notes down in the description for sure. Thank you so much. It's just a crazy week. I think you're going to be literally everywhere next week.
You know, WrestleMania is always like that every year, and for at least the last 2 years in a row, I completely spent everything I had as far as energy and then some. And I remember the last 2 years I said, I'm not going to do that to myself again. You know, I overdid it. But then here I am this year doing everything I've done the last couple of years and wrestling twice. Both actually, you know, within 24 hours of each other. So I did step it up, but also, I think I'm a little more ready for it now. I had a little time to sit around, and you know that kind of can stir up some energy and motivation. So I got a little more drive than I did before. I'm always running into these busy weeks right from being busy. Like for instance, I will be in Pittsburgh at the start of that week, and then you know, be coming from there on. I'm there on the 12th at Steel City Con, and then you know the 13th I'm back home and right into this week. So these are the kind of weeks where I close my eyes and get a couple hours a nap here and there when I can.
How are you doing since the injury last year at the MLW show?
Yeah, I feel, you know, like I just am able to put that behind me because it had been a whole year of just getting better and better, but still having sore feet. Feet are still a little sore, but they don't keep me from doing anything. I had my first match back a few weeks ago, February 27th in Australia, and much to my satisfaction, the match was smooth. Everybody loved it, and it was actually, like I was trying to explain, like a point of remotivation for me. A little different incentive maybe, because if I have anybody or the universe even trying to tell me, hey, you know, you can't do this anymore, I got to prove them wrong. And so just to be able to get back in the ring, feel good, know that moving forward I don't have to worry about that problem. I can put that behind me, because I didn't know until I got in there. You know, I thought, well, maybe I'll have to change it up a little bit, be a little slower, I don't know. But anyway, man, I felt great, just like I always do when it's time for the bell to ring.
Well, I don't think there's ever been a bad RVD match.
Well, you know, I mean, I had to start somewhere, and just like with anything, I probably wouldn't be as proud of my first few matches as I would my last few matches, and that goes with anything. You know, it was a long adventure, lots of learning along the way, listening to legends, and now here I am, the legend, Hall of Famer, whole effing show. I enjoy being on that side of the coin. I enjoy not having all of my thoughts second guessed or told not to believe the things that I believed, or that my perspective was just one of a green kid, so it didn't count. I always resented those times because I think differently, so I don't need people to agree with me. But after 30, 35 years or so in the business, finally people start thinking that I got enough credibility behind my name and behind my actions to go ahead and have my own thoughts.
I think more than anything else, here's my response to you in that regard. I have one quick question, and then I have a good question that you'll really like. How long have you lived in Vegas? You live in Vegas, no?
Yeah, I moved here in 2018.
Never knew that. Never knew that till the moment we were doing this today, and I looked it up, and I'm like, I didn't know he lived here all these years, because I've lived here for about a decade.
Yeah, I love it. But I am a homebody. I don't go out like I did when I was visiting Las Vegas and not living here. But sometimes I am seen at the Nerd Bar. That's about and the airport. I'm sitting at the airport often.
And that's why you're doing the WrestleMania 2 after party. That's why, obviously.
Yeah, Johnny Nerd, we call him Nerd Bar Johnny, whatever. He's a friend of all the wrestlers. Big fan he is of wrestling. It would be a wrestling bar, except it's also for comic book fans and for video game fans and for, fans of Japanese art, whatever. There's room for all kinds of different nerds. And so having said that, he does a lot with wrestling, and that week he's got a lot planned. He's got a Sabu memorial that involves wrestling, and some kind of a monument that is being erected, I believe, at the Neonopolis Plaza, where the Nerd Bar is. And so I'm definitely going to try to make it to that as well.
Memories of Sabu, as we're on that topic.
Man, he was my closest friend. He was my brother. I can't imagine someone really getting closer to me in the business. He brought me in, he trained me. I felt like I was a representative of his, or that we both were a representative of the Sheik in respectful ways. And whether I was tagging with him over the years or wrestling against him, always my favorite matches to have, and favorite guy to be around as well too. So it really sucked. It was a pretty big loss. I feel like maybe he had a little idea that it was coming, but wasn't real specific, but dropped a lot of hints, and a lot of it is picked up in the documentary we made on him. If you haven't seen the documentary Sabu, look for that. Me and Joe Clark made it. The guy that I made, Headstrong, which is on Amazon, which is a movie on me in 2016 and 17, dealing with concussion symptoms back then. But we really caught a lot of good, raw, unfiltered Sabu moments. Proud of the documentary. And you can see the foreshadowing on there as well. He specifically talks about if he dies after this last match, what it would mean to him and stuff. And so, in that way, he was almost like an Obi-Wan Kenobi that just kind of faded into the spirit world and kind of feels like he's still around.
Yeah, in my early journalism days, it was you and Bill Alfonso were some of my earliest interview subjects, and because you guys came on and spoke with me, we're still here 25 years later, got to cover celebrities, newsmakers, and I'm so grateful for all of you guys. And I thank you, Rob, because you were one of the first people who ever came on my podcast back in the day.
Awesome. I'm glad it worked out. And so is Sabu Wan Kenobi.
Very good. Well played. So here's my question moving along on that. Of course, we talk about the matches of Sabu. When did you know that you and Jerry Lynn were going to do something special together?
Not until we did it. Yeah, we had our first matchup was at the ECW Arena in Philly, and I was told that the match probably shouldn't be that long because Jerry wasn't that high of status on the card, and so it was suggested maybe I take like about 8 minutes to beat him. And I thought, one, I liked his style. I knew he was a fellow, high flyer. At least there was a handful of us back then, like 1, 2, 3 Kid and me and Sabu, Jerry Lynn. I mean, there was a couple more, but not a whole lot. Not like everybody now, like even just doing a dive over the top rope back then put you in a whole different category, different realm of style of wrestling. And anyway, he was a friend through a friend. It was with Scotty Riggs. I didn't know Jerry, but he was cool by association, and I was enjoying this time of my career, having the television title and having the freedom to try to have the best match subjectively on any given night. So every night when I was working, I was trying to do my part, literally everything I could to make sure that the fans had a great show, great night, went home happy, even if the rest of the card sucked. Like I felt like I had that freedom and responsibility, and not that the rest of the card sucked, but I did feel like I was accomplishing that at that time. And it had a lot to do with stretching out my opponent's potential, finding, what I could with them and working with what I could find. And so instead of 8 minutes, I think I went like 25 minutes or something. And instead of just beating them real quick, we fought through the crowd. I had a bloody nose. I think my outfit was ripped. My hair was all over the place. And then when I beat him, then I felt like I really beat somebody. And it was a really big, 1, 2, 3, like finally this match is over after we did all kinds of shit. And then it just went from there. The first match was great, a lot of fun. And then just each time we wrestled, we seemed to apply everything that we had learned about each other from the last match and take it a step further. So we just had that chemistry.
Well, speaking of those styles, like when did you know that you were going to have a wrestling career that was going to be different than everybody else, that you were just going to do things no one else could do?
Well, so in the literal sense, that's really what always attracted me towards imagining myself as a wrestler. Like before I ever had my first professional matches, me and my best friend Dango, we were always just making up moves. Like that's what we would do even when we were kids. We would just make up things that we hadn't seen. And I had the split-legged moonsault before my first match. I was like, man, I wonder if I could jump up and hit the rope on the top, bounce off my thighs. And that was always something that I strived for. I don't remember really knowing that I was getting credit for going down that avenue until probably 2001. I don't remember if Joey Styles ever called me one of a kind or not. He may have. And I do wonder, but I remember in WWE, they were calling me one of a kind all the time. That was my music, one of a kind. And then all of a sudden, JR's commentary is all about how unorthodox my style is. And so it just, I just started really noticing that. And then it made me really own it because I really liked the non-conformative value of standing out, being different. And I've always hated the pressures of trying to fit in with other kids at school, trying to wear clothes that they say is cool, listen to music that they like, and trying to be cool because, if I feel different than they do, then that's just, then, oh no, I'm doing something wrong, so that became something that I decided to really stand for.
But here's the thing, and this is what I think is great about your story, and I'm sure you'll understand this when I say this, you lived an authentic career. You were who you were. It was undeniable that you had the pro wrestling talent. Everybody loved you. And the reality of what it comes down to is you were not held back by the politics that many guys who people will say, oh, they didn't get their fair shake. You got the world title. You got to wrestle all the greats. The reality is that nothing was going to hold you back, and you got to be your authentic self through the process.
That's true. Like Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way, and no doubt about it. If I hadn't brought ECW back to the WWE's stage, it's very likely that I wouldn't have been in that number one spot. It wouldn't have possibly been an appropriate thing to do. But by changing the entire playing field, it just really worked in my favor, and boom, I ended up, although for a very short time, but I did end up at the top with the championship belt. And it wasn't something that people were talking about like, it's a fluke, you don't deserve it. It was more like everyone was like you said, they're like, yeah, we love this guy, boom, he deserves it. We're standing behind him. We love his matches. And who knows how long it would have lasted had it not gone down the way it did with the bust in Ohio. But somebody had some plans. They weren't me. So I say, who knows? There is an answer for that. Somebody knows, but whatever, that was my path. Yeah, like you're saying, I did it my way. It happened the way it happened.
But here's my question. When you won the title from Cena, was that like the ultimate moment of vindication? Like, I marched to my own drum all the way through. I got the world title. I beat the champion. I got to wrestle all the other guys that were champions. It wasn't like I was left at the bottom of the card and I was never going to get my shot.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very vindicating because my whole career, I had dealt with a lot of pushback from people that didn't understand me or thought that maybe I was changing the business in a way they didn't want to see it changed, which I can understand now and appreciate from a different perspective than I even could back then, because I've seen it happen, and I am partially responsible for it in my own head anyway. But
well, you absolutely are.
Well, to stick to my guns. And we all loved ECW so much. All of us that were there left our heart and passion there. It's the most fun that most of us had. And to make that possible, a moment that wasn't even on the cards, for happening at all. And then boom, bring it back from the dead and then relive my favorite times again, which was ECW, So yeah, very vindicating that it ended up me fighting for everything that I ever stood for, and Cena standing for everything that the traditional mainstream values of WWE stood for at the time, and the crowd not evenly divided, but definitely standing with me, everything I stood for, and what I could do for pro wrestling. So boom, holding the gold up at the end, definitely my moment of vindication.
No, I think so, absolutely. So here's what I'm going to say going back to that. I just remember I was watching all the pro wrestling. I remember when I found ECW at 3 a.m. on the Sunshine Network in Florida the first time ever, and I saw you with Bill Alfonso, and I was just like, this is just the most incredible thing on the face of the earth. And like everyone else, I just became a religious ECW guy and loved every minute of it and loved every match you ever had, and you were the star of the company. My question is that if you're saying that you didn't realize till later what you had influence, did you realize how ECW was changing the business, or did you not realize that till later as well?
When I was in the original ECW, I knew that we were changing the business because all of our ideas were getting copied on the big mainstream show, So, I mean, they saw, a lot of people saw Stone Cold drinking beer in the ring before they saw Sandman do it. A lot of people saw Shano do the coast to coast before they saw RVD do the Van Terminator, but I was already doing that there. A lot of people weren't exposed to ECW because it was hard to find, and it definitely, nobody's got the crowd, the people, the viewing audience that WWE does. Nobody. And so we were watching our ideas being stolen, or now as I see it, more like sold underneath us by Paul, and played out, like with different characters.
Makes sense. So here's my question. So you get to the big stage. You know what the first thing I thought when you were in WWE was? How could him and Eddie Guerrero not have the greatest match ever?
Yeah, I'm glad that we got the chance, to work a program or two with each other. It seems like I had a lot of matches with them, traveling around the world. I remember the one in the UK a lot. And man, he was somebody that really took wrestling seriously. He really cared about his performance on any given night in a really intense, serious fashion, and I respected that.
No denying that. So we spoke about Jerry Lynn and Sabu. Who else did you enjoy? And we spoke about Eddie Guerrero. Who else did you enjoy wrestling in your career?
Jeff Hardy, of course. Had some great matches with Jeff. Rey Mysterio, I loved tagging with him, and when I'm in the wrestling him, either way, like-minded guys like that have similar ideas for what would be really cool in a wrestling match are preferred over wrestlers that are exact opposite. But that is the job, is to consistently try to have the best match, whether you're in there with Little Guido Spike Dudley or Bam Bam Bigelow One Man Gang, or whether you're in there with someone with a style like Balls Mahoney or Axel, or whether you're in there with someone like Lance Storm, which is completely different. There's so many different styles, and everybody brings what they bring, to the table. And a wrestling promoter way back in the day told me to be the best, you have to be consistent regardless of who you're in the ring with. And so that just really stuck out in me. So thank you, Ben Masters, for putting that in my head. And because of that, I always looked forward to the challenge of that, but had the most fun when it's someone, like Sabu, Jeff Hardy, Jerry Lynn, someone like that.
Okay, just about 5 more. Let me ask you, so how would you describe your overall health today? I think you said that, please tell me if this is true, that you feel like you've had a couple hundred concussions in your career. Is that true?
I actually one time came up with a number that I ended up using a lot in speeches or whatever, but yes, and I came up with like 500 one time by but these are all self-diagnosed, so people could argue whether they're legit.
Absolutely.
For me, I considered, like, when I got rocked, okay, if anybody knows what that means, if you get your bell rung, which could happen in so many different ways. Sometimes I'd get hit, like Balls Mahoney would crack me over the head with a chair, bam. Sometimes the sound would go out, Like everything else would be kind of normal, but the sound is out. Like someone turned it off on on the TV. Sometimes everything would be like in slow motion. Sometimes I see stars, and it may depend on where in my brain I'm getting hit. But whenever anything like that happens, I would go ahead and consider that a concussion. So that's what I was going by. That's what Chris Nowinski told me. He said, just go ahead and assume it's a concussion, which it factually may or may not, medically be diagnosed as that. But either way, like I said, I'm getting rocked. My senses are altered, and all of them, with very few exceptions, only lasted a few seconds. There was a couple that lasted overnight, like 2, maybe 3, maybe. For a few hours, and then I don't think I felt it in the morning. And then one that just stuck with me for like almost 2 years. So that one, I got double vision in 2016, and it wasn't even a hard hit. The movie Headstrong, you can watch on Amazon, is a documentary I made about that. We got, it's very candid and open and honest, like you would expect it to be coming from RVD. And I share some really private moments there. But I had to go through, besides all the testing with the MRIs and all this, I learned a lot about CTE and about concussion damage, and the difference with long-term concussion damage and CTE. People think it's the same thing, and it's not. It's not even close. That's like saying you got a bad memory, and it's the same thing as Alzheimer's. It's literally a great comparison, because wrestlers say, oh, well, we all got CTE. No, it's a wasting away degenerative disease, like Alzheimer's, and it's not the same thing as long-term concussion damage, which can go away. And I learned that the studies were still new. The doctors, I'd say, is this going to go away? I think so. I'd say, well, when? Don't know. You'll tell us. I'm like, but is it going to be like days, or is it going to be years? I'd say, we don't know. And I learned, that the studies really were pretty new and pretty open to interpretation still. But a lot of it was time, and a lot of it was vision therapy. And then I came around to where eventually I got back to where my vision tests and reactions and everything are normal. I've always worn glasses, and my vision's never been like really strong. But at least I'm back to as shitty as I was before. Just a little over.
So how many more matches do you think you got left in you?
I don't know, but the way I feel now, meaning my perspective could change, but I feel great physically now. By the way, you asked about my health, and if somebody asks me if I'm old, I just say I'm 55 and let them decide, because for me at 55, it doesn't feel anything like I thought a 55-year-old was supposed to feel like. You know what I mean? I'm still working out, hitting the heavy bag, taking bumps, whatever. And now I look at like 70, 75 seems like an old man, but I don't mind if somebody wants to look at me different than how I look at myself, but I just know how I feel and shit, so that's physically, I feel good. And like I said, I've been sitting on my ass with broken heels, not able to do a whole lot. So now that I'm off of that, I'm extra inspired to not only work out and to be able to move around and wrestle and train, but also to actually get in the ring and wrestle. So, so good. So good about that. And, that was your question before, and then what did you say? I wanted to say something.
Well, that was it. You got it. So here's moving along. A couple more. During your era, who are the legit tough guys? Not Haku. Everybody else. Who are the legit tough guys?
Well, I mean, what is my era? Because like I've been wrestling for so long, if you.
Well, I mean, during your time in the business is what I'm going to say.
Yes.
Aside from Haku, like who are the real tough guys?
Brock Lesnar for sure. Bobby Lashley, um, Kurt Angle, guys that are guys that actually compete in legit fighting sports outside of pro wrestling are like on a whole nother level. You know what I mean? So I would name all of those guys first. Ken Shamrock for sure, and that'd be a gang of guys I'd like to have around me to watch my back if I needed someone to help me out in a dark alley right there.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, two more. Favorite Bill Alfonso story.
I don't think that one's appropriate. The El Gigante story. Gigante story, yeah.
How about what he's meant to your career? What he meant to your career back in ECW?
Man, Fonzie was great, man. Me and Sabu both loved him. We're like always been like family. When he first got put with me, it was just. Like they do stuff and on any given night, they could just say, boom, it's you and Kevin Nash tonight. You're a tag team. Like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, you show up and you look at the card and you see if you're in a tag or single, who your partner is, who you're working with. It's usually like that. And so Fonzie was thrown with me. And looking back at it now, I think I probably needed a mouthpiece because I hated doing interviews back then and didn't want anything to do with trying to convince somebody, through my words. I just wanted my actions to speak. Fonzie spoke for me. He took his job very seriously. He would get to the hotel before us if he could, make sure that we had like the best room. He would go like way out of his way to validate his position so that we would be happy and so that we would tell Paul that we want to keep him, keep working with him and stuff. He would say, Van Dam, I made sure you got like the biggest room. You got like an extra suite. I talked to them ahead of time, not the front desk. And he's just always been great like that. And I still love to keep in touch with him and see him when I'm in Florida.
Oh, I do too. Do you want to do more acting?
Yeah, I enjoy acting, and it's something that just like with my wrestling, and I said, I wouldn't be as proud of my earlier stuff as my later stuff. I got a lot of my learning experience on camera over the years. But then, yeah, I started making sense. I started getting it more like with enough experience. And I actually sometimes still do have projects that come across my table and then either happen or don't happen. I've definitely done some movies that haven't come out. One that is supposed to be it was supposed to have just gotten sold, and so distribution talks will hopefully come soon, and then and maybe you'll hear about that. But I enjoy it. It's not something that let me see how I can put this. It's not something that I have I'm not the whole effing actor like I am with wrestling. So, there's like, it's not something where a lot of people think, oh, I just need to be discovered, I can be a big star. For me, it's been fun, but I have to have parts that are somewhat, if they're not tailored for me, they got to be something that I can handle. I'm not going to be the singing ballet guy. I don't have that part of acting in me where I just want to perform, and even if it's singing and dancing or making an ass out of myself, like that. That part, as a matter of fact, sometimes when I'm on the set, my instincts will even be off. Like I'll have a line, and I'll say something. We'll do a take, and you'll walk by me, and I'll say, all right, well, I'm out of here. I'm gonna take a walk, and then we'll go cut, and then whatever, and then we get another one. Someone will walk up, and they had a completely different. You know what? Either they'll say that's a throwaway line, which I just threw it away when I said I'm out of here. But sometimes I'll say it with more emphasis. Well, I'm out of here. They'll just throw it away. How do you know that? Like, how do you get the, or the other way, they'll say, no, you know what? It's like, check and see if anyone needs anything. I'm like, well, I'm out of here, meet their eyes or whatever. See if anyone needs you before you leave. Like, how do you know that? We're both reading the same line on the script, There's stuff like that too, where I'm more of an opportunist than an actor, but I enjoy it and have quite a resume I built up over the years.
You know what makes you great as well, by the way, away from the ring? You're always one of the best interviews for a journalist. You just have the greatest stories, and you give a real answer and a very detailed answer, and I always enjoy that about you, Rob. A final question. What did being in the WWE Hall of Fame mean to you in 2021? Was that a second moment of vindication for you, or were you already past it at this point?
No, it is another form of vindication. It really is. It's them acknowledging me as a legend, and I didn't realize. I knew it was an honor, all that. I didn't realize how much it would change the way that I'm perceived from that day moving forward. But now, like, whenever I'm introduced, it's as Hall of Famer, and it's just like it puts me in a little bit more of an elite group of people, and it's it's an honor. It's cool to be considered a legend, and it's trying to think of how else I could put it. When if somebody doesn't know anything about wrestling, say they don't, I don't know. My kid watches it. I'm sure he's a fan of yours. I don't watch it. Whatever. Do people know who you are? I'm a Hall of Famer. Boom. That kind of says it all right there. Oh, you're a Hall of Famer. Okay. You know what I mean? So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but here's my response to you. Last comment. Your talent speaks for itself. Whether you were in a Hall of Fame or not, your talent speaks for itself. The WWE couldn't deny your talent. Again, there are many guys who get to the top of the industry, as you know, and they get held back for different reasons. And you didn't get held back, at least.
Yeah, a lot of it is timing, like say Paul Heyman wouldn't have been in the office or in a influential position. I don't think I had anybody else speaking or pushing for me. And I did have opposition from some of the guys that sat at the round table that didn't agree that RVD was the way to go. So really, everything kind of has to be lined up. There's a certain amount of politics involved. It's crazy what all goes into what we accept as history,
But you can't deny crowd reactions. You can't deny crowd reactions.
That's true. And I'm grateful for all my fans, always.
Message to your fans in closing? I promise last thing.
It's so obvious.
Do you enjoy the conventions when you get to meet them?
I do. I was gonna say it's so obvious I couldn't do what I do without them because I need them. It's exactly interacting with them. They're part of it. They're part of everything. But yeah, I do. I enjoy the meet and greets, and it's something that I'm good at too. Not everybody is, but I do a lot of conventions where I have lines full of people, and every moment is a special moment with everybody, so nobody gets like zoomed through. It would suck for me if somebody had a bad experience, so I don't let that happen.
So you understood the whole thing, and I think when up and coming stars in the business, there should be a masterclass from RVD about how to be in and outside of the ring, how to conduct yourself as a professional in professional wrestling. You could absolutely teach that course. That's the last thing I'll say.
Yeah, well, maybe a good. I'll go to the college and maybe start signing people up for RVDology.
There you go. There's well said. Rob Van Dam, we'll just break it down. He's got 2 matches as well. We'll put it in the description, but let me just break it down again. The Plaza Showroom, obviously, April 18th, the WrestleMania Night 1 party. He'll have a question and answer at 1:30. April 17th through the 19th, WrestleCon at the Horseshoe. He'll be at WWE World, of course, on the 20th. And, of course, back on the 19th, after party Night 2 at the Nerd. And you got a couple matches this week as well. We'll put in the thing. RVD, as always, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for the 40 minutes, and thanks so much for the amazing stories as well. And you should always know that you did it your way.
Indeed. Yes, I did. Thanks for noticing, Chris.
You're welcome.